Okay, let's get started. So, right now, what we're seeing right here is us logged into the actual NICE challenge. So this specific video is going to be kind of a walkthrough on the first NICE challenge that you guys are kind of working with, and I'll create additional kind of getting started videos as well to kind of help you out with working on these labs, because initially they can seem a little bit overwhelming when you first start them. So a couple things to kind of note in what we're looking at right here. So again, in the left-hand column, in the upper left-hand column, we have all the different virtual machines that we can interact with. In the right-hand side of things, we have the score checking machine, which basically will check the progress of where we're at with items. And then down at the bottom, we have our different kind of setups. So documentation is where you'll be would be typing in information about what you kind of did. Instead, all you need to do is just, when you're ready to finish, just put in a little bit of information in there, and then you can click submit. What you're submitting to me is that documented file. So the file report is what you're going to be submitting to show that you completed the challenge towards Canvas. The challenge info tells you some general information about what systems you're going to be working on, what you kind of have to do, and then also provides the username and password for the systems that you're logging into. Typically, what we're going to be utilizing is the username player1 with the password 123, all lowercase. So that's what you'll be utilizing likely to log into our specific systems. It provides the firewall's web interface, but we will not need to use the firewall for here on this system. So in the meeting notes, this is what will pop up when your environment is starting to get ready to deploy. This kind of gives you a run through of the actual system itself and kind of tells you a little bit about what we need to do. So the two people that are kind of assigning you your tasks are Ashley Steele and Ricardo Cortez. So Ashley is asking us to basically say, hey, we ran a scan on our file share and prod Joomla server, and we have some security changes that we want you to make on those systems. And then there's a little bit of additional information, but the important thing down at the bottom here is that Ashley here has provided us information and basically a log report in the audit log file. And so that's what we're going to be kind of looking at when we log in. So when we log into our first system, and again, the important thing to note here is we only need to work on two systems, prod Joomla and the file share. So I'm going to start with the prod Joomla, and over here again, this is just utilizing HTML5. So I selected the HTML5 option, it loaded the virtual machine in a new window for me, and this is what I'm going to be kind of logging into. So I've already logged into this system, but it's just player1 and password 123. So first thing to kind of look at is we look at, say, print working directory to see where we're currently existing, and we know that we're in our home player1 folder. And then we can do ls to list the contents of that folder, and we can see the audit.log file that Ashley created for us. So we can use a couple different ways to kind of view this file. You could use cat, you could use vi, nano. I would probably recommend that we use the less command in order to take a better look at the actual system or the configuration file itself without having to page around too much. So we can use less, audit.log, and essentially this is where we want to do a little bit of reading and kind of some general scanning. So this is the Linus log file, and we can see I just press the space bar and we can see that page down to the suggestions, and you can see these are the list of suggestions that they want us to kind of go through and install. And then you can see down at the very bottom there that there's a note from Ashley Steele that basically says, here's the additional task that I want you to kind of complete. So the things there are, they want us to install a PAM module for password strength testing. They want us to configure a minimum password age, a maximum password age, install the Apache Mod Evasive service, install the Apache Mod Quality of Service, install Apache Mod Security, and then also install Fail to Ban. So a lot of these are pretty straightforward when it comes to configuring them. The other thing to kind of note there is on the minimum password age, it wants us to configure it in the etc login.defs file. So just make sure that we kind of know that that's where we need to make some of our changes. Now the other thing to kind of note here is you can see down at the at each line it has a specific section, and it'll say like auth 9262 or auth 9286 for the minimum password age. Well, if we go back to the Nice Challenge web portal, you can see that these are the actual say tasks that they want us to complete. So what it's checking off against is it's checking off against those named tasks from that log file in order to kind of take a closer look. So that's pretty straightforward. So when we're looking through this and we're going, okay, well, I don't even know where to really begin. First part to kind of look at is just go, okay, well, what does it want me to do? It wants to install a PAM module like PAM crack lib. Okay, so if I to kind of look at that, we'd want to kind of take a look and go, okay, well, if I want to install PAM crack lib, how do I do that on an Ubuntu system? So we can say install PAM crack lib on an Ubuntu system. Now, obviously, I've already kind of looked through this a little bit, so you'll kind of see what I've kind of already taken a look at. And this very first one kind of walks us through what some of the options actually are. So I basically just look at this and go, okay, well, here's the systems of what I need to do to kind of go through and install. So here's what the actual service is to pull down from apt-get, so libpam crack lib. But what is a PAM? So a PAM is a pluggable authentication module. So essentially, it's an additional method of kind of allowing us to set up some form of authentication for different user accounts, and to have a better way of kind of tracking and logging and ensuring password security on, say, like a Linux system. So that's the basic idea of kind of what we want to look at. So when we're kind of going through and going, okay, well, how do I actually install a PAM module? We have a couple different options of what we can do. So the easy way to kind of look at this is to kind of go, okay, well, what if I want to install something like PAM crack lib? Really, I've already Googled it, but I just Googled install PAM crack lib Ubuntu. And the very first hit that I had was basically this system right here from CyberCity that basically walks through and it says, okay, well, here's the actual install command to go out and grab it. So it's sudo, really, because we're on our Ubuntu system, sudo apt-get install libpam-crack lib. And that will install it for us. Now, before I quit out of my less here, what I'd want to do is take a look. I probably, to ensure that I don't have to continue to go back and forth to kind of see what I have to do and all that, what I recommend is probably using, say, like the snipping tool or snip and sketch, and taking a snip of the actual commands or kind of tasks that you have to complete. And so I've already done that. I've just brought that up right here. So this way I don't have to continue to go back into, say, less and take a look and go, okay, well, did I do this, or did I do this yet, or what file did they want me to go in and modify? And that kind of just helps with certain kind of navigation. So now that I've kind of gone through, I'm done kind of looking at this, so I can press Q to quit out of our list there. And then what I want to go through is I want to install, start with installing the PAM module. So we'll say sudo, because we're not running as root, and we'll say apt-get install lib pam dash crack lib. And it'll ask us, are we sure we want to install? You can press Y. You could also, at the very beginning of it, in that command, you could say sudo apt-get install tac y lib pam crack lib, and that will just automatically say anytime that there's an option of a yes or no, that it will just automatically apply the yes option. So you could do it that way. I just did it manually, so that's fine. Libpam is now installed there. So the next thing that we want to take a look at is to look at and go, okay, well, do we have to do any additional kind of configuration with libpam, or do we need to go through and look at, say, like the minimum password age or strength? And then one of the options that it goes down to is that our note from Ashley Steele is it goes, the password aging from cracklib is actually pretty weak in terms, so we might need to do some additional configuration in cracklib as well. So fortunately, that file that we have, so that first link that I found from CyberCity, and again I found that by just going to Google and saying install cracklib Ubuntu, or pam-cracklib Ubuntu, and you can see that it goes through and it kind of walks you through what the overall configuration is and what we kind of need to do. So when we actually go in, and what it wants us to kind of go through and configure is in the specific file of cracklib from the configuration side of things, which is the common password folder underneath etc.pam.d, there's a line in there called password and requisite, and it has initial configuration information such as the retry limit, the minimum length of the password, and then another section called default, which is set to 3. And then it states that it wants you to go through and make some additional changes here, and it says here, add on these additional options to that specific line, and it walks you through and tells you, okay, well, what are those specific areas? What is default? So this argument will change the default of 5 for the number of character changes in the new password that differentiate it from the old password. So essentially it's stating, well, how many changes away does your password have to be? So it stops you from having, say, being able to reuse the same password or a similar password or very similar password in future occurrences. And then we have the other options, which are ucredit, lcredit, DC or dcredit, and ocredit. And they have different values such as -1, -2 that we can kind of change. Now on these limits, it says ucredit says it must have 1 uppercase, so that's what the U stands for. lcredit is it must have, and the -2 says it must have at least 2 lowercase characters. Dcredit means it needs to have at least 2 digits, so numbers. And ocredit means it needs to have at least 2 special characters or symbols in it, so such as a $sign or an @ sign or the pound sign. Now the negative numbers allow us to essentially basically tell us whether how at the bare minimum how many items that we have to have. So a negative would indicate that the minimum number of uppercase characters have to be 2. If we set it to a positive number, then the maximum number of say uppercase letters would be 2. So I could have less, I could have no capitalized characters, but the absolute maximum that I could have would be 2. So that's what the negative and the positive numbers are kind of telling us there. So going back to kind of our configuration, we know we have to change the password area, so let's go ahead and kind of start with that. Now fortunately, that walkthrough is actually pretty on point for what we need to actually configure. So if we go into it and we say we're going to follow the guide, so we need to edit the file in the etc.pam.d common password. first thing that we're going to do is we're going to copy a section over. So we're going to say etc or sudo cp etc pam.d, and we're going to take the common password and we're going to grab the root. Then then we can actually go in and make a modification and start making some changes to that common password folder. So we'll say sudo nano, and again, nano is just a text editor. You could use vi. I'm just a little bit more partial to nano, just because I like that it has a little cheat sheet down at the bottom to tell me what commands I can use for like saving and exiting in case I forget. So we have our common password, and we go into our sudo nano, and then again, a lot of this is kind of going to be fluff. Everything that has a pound sign in front of it is known as a comment, so it just tells us what we have to go through. And really what I'm looking for here is we're looking for information or what we need based off of what's kind of already configured. And the section that we're looking at is for the password strength area. So we can see down the from what our kind of file tells us to do is we are looking for password requisite and then pamcracklib .so and then the additional limits. And it just so happens that that's down at pretty much the very bottom, or right in the middle here, more towards the bottom. And from there, we're going to make the character length just a little bit, we're going to make the password strength just a little bit stronger. So instead of being a minimum password length of 8 characters, I'm going to just boost it up just a little bit. We're going to say 12 characters. I'm trying to make it at least a little normal, because, you know, make the password too long, and, you know, end users typically have a hard time making, say, like a 16 plus character password. So additional things that we're going to do is, just like it kind of says, we're going to add in our additional options here. So we're going to have our ucredit set to -1. So remember, ucredit basically states that there has to be at least one uppercase character. We're going to set our L credit to -2 here, our D credit to -2, and then our O credit is also equal to -2. Okay, from there, that's pretty much it. That's all we have to add into the line there. So to save our file, we're going to say Control O, and then press enter, and that'll save it. And then we press Control X, and that will get me out of that specific area. So now that we know that we've made those changes, the next thing that we need to look at is, okay, we've made our changes to the password strength, we've installed pamcracklib, we've made these additional changes here so that the password policy in cracklib is a little bit stronger. But if I go back to the web portal, you'll see that nothing's actually done quite yet, and that's because the section that I'm working on right here is the auth 9262 and 9286 and the Ashley request. So essentially what I've done so far is I've really just completed the Ashley request and then parts of 9262, but I have not completed 9286. So until I finish that section as well, even though I've completed, say, like 2/3 of this, it's still not going to be counted as finished here. So the next section to kind of go into is just that. So we know we need to go in and change the minimum password age and look at, say, like the maximum password age. And that information is in the etc login.defs file. So same thing, we can say sudo nano, and we're going to be modifying that file. So we can go into login.defs. And so essentially what we're looking for here is we're looking for information that's going to be related to the minimum password age and the maximum password age. Now, the additional thing to note is in Ashley's request, she states that the password age, the maximum password age, should not be changed. So whatever the maximum password age is, we shouldn't change it. And the reason for that, she states, is that setting a maximum password age encourages the creation of weaker passwords. Now, that's true. In fact, in the latest NIST standards that just came out roughly about late 2018, 2019, they actually changed what they stated for passwords and for resetting passwords. And they basically came up with the idea of you shouldn't ever have to reset your password if you make a very, very strong password right at the beginning, as long as you can ensure that, or are pretty safe with making sure that that's not going to be compromised. So that's the idea there. So I'm just using page down to kind of take a look at it, and really what I'm looking through in this login file is to basically, again, just look for minimum and maximum password settings. So you will have to do a bit of reading here as you kind of go through it. You can also use different hotkeys in here. For instance, you can use, say, like the Control W to look for, to do a where is type of lookup. But I'll just kind of page through a little bit. And as you can see, after paging through just a little bit, we can see the password aging controls here. And so we have our different options. So we have the pass max days, pass min days, and pass warning age. And so this is essentially what we want to start kind of configuring. So again, pass maximum days is set to the absolute max that can be. So, and per Ashley's request, we're not actually supposed to change that. So we can leave it alone. And then the password minimum days is basically this the command that states how frequently a user can change their password. So right now it's set to 0, so I can change my password as many times as I want. Well, we're going to change that a little bit. So we're going to say minimum days that you have to keep your password is, say, set to 10. And then the password warning age basically says that you have 7 days prior to your password expiring, it will let you know that you need to change your password. I think we're okay with it being at 99,999. So that's fine. So now that we've done that, we can press Control O to save it, press Enter to save it, and then press Control X. And now that I've got that all configured, we should have configured all of the requirements in 9262, 9286, and Ashley's request. And again, it still shows as not done, but we do have to give it just a little bit of time to kind of catch up and kind of think about whether I've completed it or not. It should be all done at this point though. So while we're kind of waiting for our scoring system catch up, I would say let's just go ahead and start kind of continuing to look at additional sections. And so some of the things that it wants us to do is to go ahead and install additional kind of settings for Apache, such as mod evasive, mod quality of service, and mod security, and also install fail to ban as well. So a couple of the things to kind of look at is, well, what items do we actually really need to kind of configure, and how do I install those specific things? Well, I've kind of taken a quick look at the different setups, and most of the things of how to actually go through and configure it, I just did a quick lookup of, and say like I use DuckDuckGo, I just looked up, okay, install Apache mod security, or install Apache mod QoS. And it'll basically go through and it'll tell me, okay, well, here's what the commands are for installing those specific items. So it makes it pretty straightforward. It's pretty easy. DigitalOcean is, again, pretty straightforward on saying here's what you need to do to kind of install those things. That one's actually not right. But it's pretty straightforward for a lot of these configurations and what you kind of need to configure. So going back to our server, all we have to do is just install them. So at least that's what is basically stating. Some of them will require some additional kind of configuration, but for the most part, we just kind of have to go through the installation process. So we can say sudo apt get install, and then if we're looking at, say, like mod security, we'd look at, say, lib apache 2 -mod security. So say lib apache 2 -mod security, and that'll go through and it'll install mod security. I will have to do some additional configuration for mod security, but we can come back to that. Then we have to look at our additional options of, well, now we have to make sure that we install mod QoS and mod evasive. Well, for doing that, it's pretty straightforward. It's just mod tac QoS. It's the exact same command. And then same thing for installing mod evasive. It's the exact same command, just remove QoS and put evasive at the tail end there. And then same thing for installing, say, fail to ban. Fail to ban is pretty straightforward as well. I just did a quick lookup on what to do, and same thing, sudo apt get install. I'll even put attack y here, and we say fail to ban. That goes through, and fail to ban is all installed. So neat. So now, odds are, hopefully, a few items have probably been checked off for me when I log into my workspace. And you can see a few of these items now are fully checked off, such as the prod Joomla is all configured and for 92, 62, and 86 and the Ashley request, just like I kind of went through. The 66, 40, and 41 are all done, and that's mod evasive and mod quality of service. However, and then also the 0880 is all done as well, and that was fail to ban. And you can see that's where a little bit of a lag time happens between me installing something and not. But then you can see, okay, well, I configured fail to ban last and mod security first, and that's still not showing complete. So there might be a few additional kind of configurations that we have to do for mod security in order to get it all configured. So if we take a look at it, it kind of walks through the process of what you need to do to kind of go through and configure a bit of this. I've gone through this, and I can tell you DigitalOcean is actually pretty good in kind of outlining what you need to do. You don't have to do all these specific items, but it kind of gives you a general idea where it says, hey, just verify. Verifying is always a good idea. Just note that if you try and enter this command in right now into your system, it will actually fail because it doesn't know what to do. So the Apache CTL command, you have to run that with sudo in front of that command. In fact, because we're not running as root for any of these, which is good, you have to use sudo for all of these kind of commands. So getting back into kind of the configuration side of things, so we've already installed mod security for Apache, but now we want to make a couple of different changes. And so the first thing that we want to do is we want to make a small change to the configuration section of the file. And really what this does is it just gets rid of the recommended section just to rename it. And that actually makes it a little easier for one, us to navigate to it, and two, also for the score engine to be able to kind of see this as well. So we say move etc mod security, and again, everything that I'm typing right here is just right off of the site DigitalOcean as well. So we change the modsecurity.conf, and what I'm doing here now is I'm going to be just where I'm moving it to and just renaming it, and I'm just renaming it modsecurity.conf and just getting rid of the tac recommended. So that file is still there. I can still do a ls on etc mod security, and everything, it's all been kind of, actually it's all moved right there into my default location right there. So that is fine. Actually, we're going to change that just a little bit, and we're going to put that back to a different location, so bear with me for one. Okay, so just paused it really quick just to move that file back, and just put the mod security conf file back into the mod into etc mod security. So sorry for the confusion there. Next thing to kind of do is it wants to do a reload. So it's always good to do a reload every now and then of Apache, just so that it knows to pull from a different location. So we say sudo service Apache 2, and you can say reload or you can say restart. It doesn't really matter. Both will work. And then the next thing that we want to actually kind of go in is we want to make some changes to that mod security conf file. So again, you do have to sudo, and again, use your text editor of choice. Again, I'm using Nano here. And we're going to go back into etc mod security, and we're going to modify that modsecurity.conf file. And so right at the very top, in what DigitalOcean is saying is by default, mod security is turned off, really. So it doesn't do anything right out of the box besides just do auto detection. So it's not going to actually be doing anything. So to change that, you have to remove the detect only section and then change it to say on. And that will actually turn mod security on. The other option that you can kind of go through and make a change to is it does say that you should turn off body access handling. You can. It doesn't really matter. The primary thing that we care about right now is basically just making sure that we turn mod security on. And so now that I've done that, I can save the file with Control O and press Enter, and then exit out of the file with Control X. And that's pretty much what we need to do for that section. And hopefully, this might still not go through, so sometimes because we just made a modification to that file, it's probably a good idea to just do a restart on Apache as well. So sudo service Apache 2, and then reload or restart, either will work. And so now that we've done that, hopefully in a few minutes that will go green for us. So now that we've done that for the prod Joomla, we look at, say, the file share server, and same thing for the file share server. Go over to it and select HTML5, and that'll boot into the system right over here. It'll ask you for your login. So again, our username is player1, and the password is password123. And we log into our system, and same thing, we can say print working directory to see where we're at, and we can do an ls, and we can see that again there's a audit log file for us there as well. So we can do, say, less to kind of take a look at it, and same thing down at the bottom, you're going to see a similar list of kind of suggestions of what we need to kind of go through. Now, most of these are all the exact same thing of what we've just kind of already configured. So setting up, installing the PAM module, making changes to the password length, and then also making the password policy a little bit stronger in cracklib itself. However, there's one additional item in there that we haven't dealt with yet, which is the enable process for accounting. So one, I'm just curious, did that go green yet? Still not. Hopefully it'll go green in a little bit. But for looking at the process accounting, what we need to kind of take a look at is same thing. I already took did a quick search for it, but I just said, okay, well, how do I enable process accounting? Very first hit basically is how to enable process accounting for Ubuntu. And it goes sudo apt-get install accounting. And so what the accounting does is it allows us to keep track of our user processes. So we can keep logs of what our users are doing while they're actually on our system. And so this tool is just called accounting, or ACCT. So getting back to the file share, if we want to go through and actually install it, we'll do the same thing. We'll say sudo apt-get install accounting, or ACCT. That'll install it. And then now the next kind of steps are, again, following that guide that I kind of was able to grab. We want to go through and create a log file for where we're going to be logging our accounting tracks. And then we want to turn accounting on. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll create that file. So we'll say sudo touch, and this will create the log file. And we're going to put it in var log, and we're going to create the PACCT file, just a text file. And then we're going to turn accounting on, and we're going to say sudo ACCT on, and then we're going to tell it where to log information to, which is that packed P accounting file that we just created. And then now we can see that we've just turned that process on, and it should be tracking that information. So again, might take a minute, but you can see accounting share is actually on. So number 6643, however, for Prod Joomla still isn't turning on. So I'm going to take a closer look at that one, and let's figure out why that one's not going green for me, because it should have gone green by now. Okay, so I did get it to go green for me, and just to walk really quickly through what I did. So I did actually have to go into the, I was wrong on my initial statement, that request body handling section. We did actually have to turn it off. So once I did that, I set it to off, exited out, and then I did the sudo service apache to restart to make it repull from this config file. And that was the last thing. So that's pretty much it overall. I'm not going to do these last two sections because I already did them on the Prod Joomla for you. So basically just redo it again, but do it on the file server of what you've already done on the prod server. So hopefully that kind of helps with kind of walking through a bit of these steps. The primary things that I kind of walked through and kind of went through is make sure that if you don't know what to do, do a little bit of research. The steps of what they want you to do are fairly straightforward. That website that they link you to also does help provide some additional information about what these things are that they're asking you to install. And then, doing a quick bit of research on how to actually go about installing these items does help as well. The reason I really like these challenges is because it really emulates kind of a real-world simulation of what you might actually have to do. So I like them. Hopefully you kind of enjoyed it, and hopefully you kind of like these challenges as well. I will be putting out additional kind of how-to guides for a few of these as well, but they're not going to be full how-tos. It'll be more of like a getting started. So if you have any questions about this or anything along those lines, let me know. The one thing to just really quickly finalize on is you can come back to this system as many times as you want. So as long as you don't click Submit Challenge, it will save your state for this item. However, as soon as you click Submit Challenge Attempt, it will close everything that you've done, and everything that you've done will go away, and you cannot get it back. So there is no return button once you've clicked Submit Challenge. So make sure that once you are sure you are done, click the submit challenge attempt, and then you're all done. But if you've clicked this and you're like, oh darn, I needed to do one more thing, or I needed one more screenshot, you have to go back and redo it all. So just be careful about that. So again, hopefully this was helpful for you guys with getting started. If you do have questions, please let me know, and I'm happy to help. All right, thanks. Bye.